You feel it, don't you, that stiffness in your knees when you wake up? That ache in your hands after a long day? That fog in your brain when you try to remember a name or a date? And you tell yourself, I'm just getting older. But what if I told you that much of what you call aging is not the passing of years, it is the passing of fire? A slow, silent fire burning inside your body right now. That fire has a name. It is called chronic inflammation. And for decades, the food industry, the diet books, and even some doctors have told you that this fire is normal. That it is inevitable. That you just have to live with the pain, the fatigue, the forgetfulness. But they were wrong. And today, I am going to show you the truth. The truth that a handful of Nobel Prize winners, leading researchers in nutrition, and ancient healing traditions have known for centuries. The truth that you can eat your way out of the flames. Let me take you back to a story. I remember a patient, let's call her Margaret. She was 72. She came to me in tears because she could no longer open a jar of pickles by herself. Her fingers were swollen like little sausages. Her doctor had told her she had osteoarthritis and prescribed a painkiller. She took it every day for 2 years. But the pain only got worse. Then she started having stomach problems from the medication. She felt hopeless. She told me, I guess this is just what happens when you get old. I looked at her hands. I looked at her eyes, tired and defeated. And I said, Margaret, what if I told you that your pain is not from age, it is from what you ate for breakfast this morning? She looked at me like I was crazy. But I wasn't crazy. I was telling her the truth. That truth begins with a simple fact. Inflammation is not your enemy. In fact, it is your body's most brilliant defense system. When you cut your finger, when you catch a cold, your immune system sends an army of white blood cells to the site of injury. They create heat, redness, swelling. That is acute inflammation. It saves your life. But here is the problem. For millions of people over 60, that fire never gets turned off. It smolders. Day and night. Year after year. And it starts attacking not a cut or a germ, but your own joints, your arteries, your brain cells. That is chronic inflammation. And it is the single greatest driver of every disease that scares you most. Heart disease. Diabetes. Alzheimer's. Arthritis. Even some cancers. The data is terrifying. A landmark study from Harvard Medical School followed more than 3,000 older adults for over a decade. Those with the highest levels of a simple inflammation marker called C-reactive protein were 4 times more likely to develop heart disease. 4 times. Another study from Johns Hopkins found that older adults with high inflammation had a 60% faster rate of cognitive decline. Their brains aged faster than their years. So when you forget where you put your keys, when you feel that chest tightness after climbing stairs, when your knees scream at you to sit down, that is not the whisper of time. That is the roar of inflammation. But here is where the fear meets the first spark of hope. Because unlike your genetics, unlike your birth date, you can control this fire. You can dampen it. You can starve it. And you do it not with expensive drugs that have a list of side effects longer than your arm. You do it with a fork. With a knife. With a spoon. You do it by eating certain foods that are nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory medicines. And I am not talking about exotic superfoods you have to order from a jungle in the Amazon. I am talking about foods that have been on this planet for thousands of years, foods that your great-grandmother would recognize. Let me start with the single most important group. Leafy greens. spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens. These leaves are packed with a compound called lutein. You have probably heard of lutein for your eyes. But did you know that lutein is one of the most potent inflammation quenchers for your brain? A study from the University of Illinois found that older adults who ate just one serving of leafy greens a day had the cognitive function of people 11 years younger. 11 years. That is not a vitamin. That is a time machine. And the reason is simple. Leafy greens block the signal that tells your immune system to stay on high alert. They are like a fire extinguisher for your cells. Margaret, the woman with the swollen hands, she started eating a big handful of spinach every morning in her eggs. Within 3 weeks, she called me and said, "I opened a jar of pickles this morning. It hurt, but I did it." Within 2 months, she was opening jars with one hand. That is not a miracle. That is biology. Then we have the berries. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. These little jewels are loaded with a class of compounds called anthocyanins. That is the deep purple, red, and blue color. Now, listen closely. A randomized controlled trial, the gold standard of science, gave older adults with memory complaints a cup of blueberries every day for 4 months. At the end of the study, their brain scans showed activity that looked like healthy younger brains. Their inflammation markers dropped by nearly 40%. 40%. You do not need a prescription for that. You need a trip to the frozen food aisle. Because frozen berries work just as well. And they are cheaper. So here is the fear again. Every time you reach for a sugary donut, a white bread sandwich, a bowl of that processed cereal, you are pouring gasoline on the fire. But every time you grab a handful of berries, you are pouring water. Now, let us talk about fats. For 40 years, we were told that fat makes you fat, that fat clogs your arteries, that fat is the enemy. That was a lie. The biggest lie in nutritional history, because there are fats that put out the fire and fats that fan the flames. The good fats are called omega-3 fatty acids. You find them in fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies. And no, not farmed salmon that is fed corn and soy. Wild caught if you can. But even canned sardines are a miracle. The data from the Framingham Heart Study, which has followed families for 3 generations, showed that older adults with the highest blood levels of omega-3s lived on average 2.2 years longer and spent their last years with far less disability. Their joints moved. Their hearts pumped. Their minds stayed sharp. Why? Because omega-3s literally insert themselves into your cell membranes and tell the inflammatory signals, stop. You cannot come in. They are the bouncers at the door of every cell in your body. And do not forget olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil. The green, peppery kind that burns the back of your throat when you taste it. That burn is a compound called oleocanthal. Scientists at the Monell Chemical Senses Center discovered that oleocanthal works exactly like ibuprofen. It blocks the same inflammatory enzymes. But unlike ibuprofen, which can damage your kidneys and your stomach lining over time, olive oil is food. It is medicine you can pour over your vegetables. A massive study from Spain called the PREDIMED study took over 7,000 older adults at high risk for heart disease. One group was told to eat a low-fat diet. Another group was told to eat a Mediterranean diet with lots of olive oil. The study had to be stopped early because the olive oil group had such a dramatic reduction in heart attacks, strokes, and deaths that it was considered unethical to keep the low-fat group on their diet. Let that sink in. Eating fat saved their lives. Avoiding fat put them at risk. Now, I need to tell you about the spice that should be in every kitchen of every person over 60. Turmeric. That bright yellow root that has been used in India for 5,000 years. Western medicine finally caught up. Over 10,000 peer-reviewed studies have been published on curcumin, the active compound in turmeric. And what they found is astonishing. Curcumin can match the anti-inflammatory power of some prescription drugs, without the side effects. A study from the University of Maryland gave turmeric to patients with rheumatoid arthritis. After 8 weeks, their joint pain and swelling improved more than those taking standard anti-inflammatories. But here is the trick. Turmeric alone is not well absorbed. You have to eat it with black pepper. The piperine in black pepper boosts turmeric absorption by 2000%. So when you make that golden milk, that turmeric tea, that curry, always add a pinch of black pepper. Your joints will thank you. But let me pause here. Because I have given you hope, and I want you to hold on to it. But I would be lying to you if I did not also give you a warning. There are foods that are not just neutral. They are actively destructive. They keep the inflammatory fire burning. And the worst of them is sugar. Refined sugar. High fructose corn syrup. The white powder in your cookies, your cakes, your sodas, your sweetened yogurts, your healthy granola bars. Sugar triggers a massive release of inflammatory messengers called cytokines. Within 30 minutes of drinking a can of soda, your inflammation markers spike. And they stay elevated for hours. Now imagine doing that 3, 4, 5 times a day. Every day. For years. You are not aging. You are burning. The same goes for refined grains.